more. Let's talk about it with Roshini Rajkumar, who is someone I've been interviewing for years on issues of communications, crises, and more. She is the host of the Crisis Files podcast, a crisis strategist, and a licensed attorney based in Minneapolis, is the former host from 2012 to 2021 of Real Talk with Roshini on WCCO Radio in Minneapolis. Her book, Communicate That, is in its third edition. Her website, ownyourwow.com. Roshini Rajkumar joins me now. Good morning, Roshini. How are you?
Good morning, Jimmy. And, you've really got quite the energy doing all these shows, so it's great to be on with you in the morning.
You know what? It's just the microphone that does it. Afterwards, I'll probably crash and be like, all right, can I take my nap yet? I need that nap right about now. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's start with there's no there. When I hear that quote from anyone, let alone the President of the United States, it absolutely makes me think there's something there.
Right.
Let's keep digging. Reporters are asking the questions. Finally, they're asking the questions. And his press secretary, whose last name, by the way, I love how you pronounce, is not holding up well. She just isn't. I mean, it's her job to speak for the president. So I don't know what she's saying. I'm not going to say anything separate from what the president said. So the problem here is on a couple of different levels. Certainly there are the legal angles that we can look at. But let's just even put that aside for a moment, even though it does seem Attorney General Garland is being very fair and is also saying nobody is treated differently. Now, that's how we should be in our country. That doesn't always play out. But that's at least Garland's line right now, and I like hearing that. The legal things aside, just the very fact that documents from as far back as your Senate career are in your private homes or other places that really aren't public buildings, that is very troubling. That should trouble all of us on many levels. The optics of it, the legality of it, just the politics of it. So there's that. It's just a terrible PR nightmare for Biden, for the Democrats, for the White House right now. And there is an argument to be made that the Democrats are letting this just fly and setting themselves up to find a new presidential candidate for 2024.
So one of the things that has been, and we'll get back to Merrick Garland here in a bit because I want to maybe push back a little bit on something that you said in regards to the Attorney General. But one of the things that we keep hearing, a refrain from the administration, is that they take this seriously. The president takes this seriously. Karine Jean-Pierre consistently reinforces that narrative. Well, yesterday at her press conference, she was pressed to give any actual evidence that they take it seriously. And here's that.
When you and the White House and the president all say that the president takes these classified documents very seriously, without commenting on the ongoing legal issue, what would you point us to that would demonstrate that seriousness?
I'm going to really refer you to the White House counsel's office. I am. I'm going. I am.
So the president continues to say that he takes this seriously, and you can't demonstrate how he takes it seriously.
Let me just finish. Let me finish my answer. I'm gonna refer you to the White House counsel's office, and I'm gonna refer you to the statements that you've received from his personal lawyer. I'm going to refer you to the 45 minutes of conversation, of back and forth that my colleague has had with all of you last week. He's about to do another one where you can ask questions about this particular legal matter.
Karine Jean-Pierre just wants you to trust their word for them, Roshini Rajkumar, and that is, we take it seriously. We're not going to provide you evidence, but believe us when we tell you we take it seriously.
Well, and that, if you remember from, or maybe before you were born, the Gong Show, that would get a gong. That answer is just a bunch of crap, okay? If you're sitting in the position that she's sitting in, you cannot answer the National Press Corps, the White House Press Corps in that way. So, that's my first point on that. The rest of this is, so they go in with these different search warrants or, okay, we're opening up this space to the FBI. And more things are found than the FBI even went in to look for. So just at every layer of this. Now, to be fair, I was really thinking through some stuff. We're doing a big home renovation. We're going to be switching homes this summer. I've been thinking, do I know everything that's down in my storage room? No. but I sure as hell know it's all mine. It's not my neighbors.
Right.
It's not the governors of the state of Minnesota or Colorado. So these are the kinds of things that we should be asking the president's handlers, because obviously the president doesn't have very coherent answers. I am very troubled by his response. In fact, this is a case or a time for less is more. You've heard me say that, Jimmy. Less is more. And he just needs to stop talking about it. The other thing, as far as the press secretary goes, you and I have talked on your show in the past about body language, eye contact, all those subtextual images.
Yes.
Well, if your listeners get an opportunity to watch some of these press secretary remarks, how she hardly can keep eye contact with the reporters asking her questions. That's like, press secretary 101. You better look these people in the eye who are asking you these questions, have short, tight answers if you don't want to expand on things, but at least look them in the eye, and I'm not seeing a lot of that from her.
Again, we're talking with the host of the Crisis Files podcast, Roshini Rajkumar. I think it's not only is it revealing her body language and the lack of eye contact, but the language goes along with it, where she's struggling to find her footing on what to actually say. And I want to give you one more example and ask you a broader question about the optics of this and what the American people are supposed to take away from it when they can't get clear-cut answers. And somehow we're supposed to believe almost that Biden is surprised by these documents turning up. Here's one more clip of Karine Jean-Pierre refusing to say if Biden knew that documents were there.
He just said the president said that he did not know the documents were there. I'm not actually sure he has said that clearly. Are you saying the president did not know?
Well, he said he was surprised. He said he was surprised.
Any of the documents?
He said he was surprised. I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to refer you to the White House counsel's office. I'm just repeating what he said, and he said
what you just said. You said he did not know the documents were
he
there.
said he was surprised that the documents were there. He said that, and that he takes this very seriously. That's what I want to make sure that the American people understand. And I just refer.
American people might question that, given that you keep every few days it seems we are finding that more documents have been found at his house.
What I'm telling you is what the president has said, which is he takes this very seriously.
Very seriously, very seriously. He takes this very seriously. That's just the constant refrain. Yet, Roshini, they won't say if he knew the documents were there, only that he was surprised that these are turning up. And by the way, this isn't just Peter Doocy of Fox News pressing. We've got reporter after reporter after reporter who's just not buying this line.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's what the media should be doing. I was watching some of these press conferences live on the plane flying home from Florida last night, Jimmy, and I saw that clip that you just aired. I saw it, and I was very happy just as an ex-TV reporter myself. It doesn't matter the politics of who's in the White House. Reporters need to be asking these questions, need to be getting at the truth, digging up. It doesn't matter the party of the president. It is very incumbent on the media to do its job right now. And by the media, I definitely mean the journalistic press, those reporters that are asking these questions day in and day out. And guess what? It's not about being nice. It's not about making a press secretary or a president or his staff comfortable. It is about getting to the truth. And that is what I hope the journalists continue to do so we understand what exactly is happening here.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you have these kinds of questions and you have the media pushing in these ways and then getting the kinds of responses, what message does that send? How would you assess the Biden administration's handling of this from a PR standpoint? Because it seems to be beyond botched to me.
Yeah, it is closer to the F range if we were going to go letter grade on this. I mean, you have to match up the reality, the perception. You have to not try to cover up. I mean, remember, often the cover up is worse than what actually you're being accused of or what actually happened. So don't try to cover anything up. But you sure as heck better know who's saying what on your behalf. And that's what I find is really at issue here. And I will say, I mean, I'm working with no one from the Biden administration. I think that press secretary needs my help because these responses are so Bush League. I mean, I think when I was in Fargo, small market television, I was experiencing better press secretaries that I was asking questions of at these kinds of press conferences. This is absolutely crazy what we're seeing and what we're hearing from the White House.
So what advice would you give them if they did bring you in, whether it was to talk with the president and or to talk with Karine Jean-Pierre? What would you advise them, Roshini Rajkumar?
You really like saying her last name, don't you?
It's how it's got to be said. That's it.
All right. Well, what I would say is, okay, look, a lot has already happened. We can't go back in time, but what we can do from this day forward is identify who's going to speak and on what topics. And if your line is counsel is the only one speaking, then she shouldn't be saying much at these press conferences. Maybe just a couple bullets that are consistent and don't change from day to day, and always refer to a specific counsel who's running the messaging on it. That is what I would recommend, or if they have another spokesperson that's more in tune to the legalities, that understands, because what we haven't really heard yet is why, from the Senate time, do we have these documents, these classified documents
right
in your possession? That's what really doesn't make sense. I mean, I was even wondering why, when he was vice president, did these things, the timeline on that. So you've got to start really staying on point, whatever your message is. And, it should be the truth. I mean, the truth is always the best message, Jimmy. Let's just not forget that point. But stick with that and don't add a lot of tangents. Don't give them reason to question the veracity, to question your morality and ethics, to question your leadership. That's what we have right now. We really have a crisis of leadership in our country that, started long before even Biden came to the White House. And it's just going to continue as long as this administration is embroiled with this crisis.
Roshini Rajkumar, our guest, again, host of the Crisis Files. Follow her on Twitter at The Crisis Files for the program. Let's talk about Merrick Garland for a moment, because you said he's being very fair and he's right to be talking about how nobody should be treated differently. However, let's go back to November of last year. November 2nd, these documents showed up first at the University of Pennsylvania. And then later that month, you had the DOJ launch its sort of investigation into Biden. But they made a big stink and let public and everything about Trump and the Trump documents. And you had the special counsel that was appointed to oversee Trump in no time after that, back in November. And we didn't hear about this until, 2-3 weeks ago for the very first time, when it was it CBS News or whichever media outlet reported on the Biden classified documents first, months after those original documents. And then a special counsel is appointed to oversee the investigation of the president of the United States, a.k.a. Merrick Garland's boss. So there have been those who've wondered, okay, why was there a multi-month period, 2 months or so plus, where you had the Biden Justice Department keep hush on that while the Trump story was out front and center, and then finally the word gets out, and then he goes ahead and appoints a special counsel. I think that there's some cause, at least, for folks to question a little bit about how fair Merrick Garland really has been here. Is there not?
Well, the simple answer is the midterm elections. Okay.
Of course.
Now, the question for me, for all of us, is, did Merrick Garland and the Justice Department know about these documents before President Biden? I would like to believe that Biden and his actual people in the White House knew before anybody else, any other, anyone from the Justice Department, any American citizen. That's where you need to point the finger on the timing. So if they knew, and I have a strong feeling they did, they withheld those documents in order to have the best case scenario for the midterm elections. Then however they came out, that's the $1 million question. Who actually leaked that or got word of that out there? That's what I'm a little unclear on. And that's then when Merrick Garland steps in. And yeah, perhaps as you described, he may not have been as consistent, but now hopefully he's correcting the score. You cannot treat this any differently. In fact, you have to have as much scrutiny, because Biden is
Sure.
a sitting president. You have to have as much scrutiny as you did for Donald Trump.
My understanding is the documents were found miraculously on the November 2nd and then provided to the National Archives, which within 24 hours, which then immediately reached out to the Justice Department and said, hey, we've got these documents. And in November, the DOJ launched its investigation. It's hard for me to fathom that Merrick Garland, as the Attorney General, did not know that this was happening regarding the President of the United States. But some of these questions will hopefully be sussed out. And hopefully he will be fair moving forward. But I do wonder about the 2+ months in the interim between the discovery of those documents and the reporting from the archives to the Justice Department, and when that special counsel, Robert Hur, was appointed a couple weeks ago by the Attorney General to look into this matter. But I want to shift gears to another topic, and I so appreciate your insights there. But while I still have you, because we're getting tight on our time, I had to ask you. I spent some time talking about this yesterday when I filled in for Deborah and Stefan. But Roshini, my heart breaks because M&M's has put their spokes candies on ice in the freezer, saying, look, things are a little bit too hot as far as the controversies regarding our spokes candies and some of the backlash against the woke stuff, at least the perception of woke mentalities being incorporated into their animated candies, that Maya Rudolph is going to step in and be the spokesperson instead of the spokes candies, who again are being swept aside because it's too controversial for the M&Ms. What do you make of this as a PR professional?
Jimmy, this is a dark day for America.
I know.
I'm not even saying this to laugh about this. How crazy have we become that those little spokes candies are getting literally canceled? I mean, that's what's happening. And these are the cutest little things. I think they have cross-generational appeal. They tie M&M's back history and legacy into the future, modernizing the brand. I am so confused by this. It's a bad decision. And guess what? Not everyone's going to love Maya Rudolph either, so then we're going to have another layer to this. So I'm really disappointed.
Is this a story of a candy, innocuous, loved by everybody, M&M's, getting too political and then facing blowback for that, and then they say, well, okay, we kind of got to step back here dramatically to the extreme and just get rid of what the source of the controversy is and hope it dies down? Is this a lesson for companies about playing politics or bringing cultural issues into their candies or other innocuous products?
Yeah, look, there are times when you can make these very pronounced statements. For example, if the Confederate flag is hanging prominently in a building, that we can come up with a bunch of reasons why that is going to be offensive to some people and should be taken down. I want to end our time together by pointing out that the contrast to this M&M's. The lesson here, and my advice as a crisis strategist, is leaders need to stand up for their brands. They need to stand up and say to the public, hey, this is what we're standing for. We're having fun with this. We can certainly change up some messaging, but we're not going to completely throw out all those little spokes M&Ms. Let me just end with this positive note. This morning in the Wall Street Journal, I'm reading about Spotify and how Spotify has to lay off 6% of its workforce. Apparently last year, the CEO said, we are not going to lay people off. We're going to do everything we can to not do that. He has to walk that back. But guess what he said? He was quoted as saying, look, where we're at is on me. I will take full responsibility for what's happening. We're going to try to make this as painless as possible. But at the end of the day, when you lay off this many people, it's difficult. What if more leaders of our country, of all of our businesses, would stand up like that and say the buck stops with me?
Right.
I think we'd be in a better place, Jimmy.
And that includes the President of the United States when it comes to something like the documents that we have seen. I'll just throw that out there. I know you wanted to end on that note, but I just want to ask you one final thing. There's speculation that this is actually a publicity stunt for M&M's in advance of the Super Bowl, and maybe they'll have some sort of grand return in a couple weeks, I think on February 12th, when the Super Bowl happens, and they will herald the return or the brand new spokes candies or something? If so, how do you think that plays?
Well, that's a little sketchy. I mean, I don't know that I could call that amazing PR, because if they were axed for a reason that really had meaning and value to people, even if you and I find it ridiculous that they were axed, if you bring them back in some full glory,
right,
then you're also kind of, poking fun at really actually sensationalizing some beliefs that many of your customers hold dear. So that's questionable, but an interesting thing to watch for and maybe talk about.
Roshini Rajkumar, host of the Crisis Files podcast. Where can folks go to listen to the podcast, Roshini?
Well, please go to anywhere you listen to podcasts, The Crisis Files. Just search for that. It pops right up. You can also go to thecrisisfiles.com, and we hope you follow us at The Crisis Files on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Wonderful. Roshini, always great to check in with you, my friend. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Jimmy.